Hey everybody out there, what's happening, what's up? It's Raven, and yes, I finally took the blue contacts out. These are my natural eyes. My natural eyes are brown. So, basically, I want to go ahead and do a video, which I feel is long overdue, on Ghetto Gaggers. I'm not doing this to defend Ghetto Gaggers, the dudes who, did it. And I'm not doing it because I feel a need to justify myself. I mean, why, at the end of the day, I gotta pay my bills. So I, personally don't really give a fuck about what anybody has to say. But what I do want to talk about is some of my observations on, some of the people's, some of the people's comments. Some of the people's comments with regards to Ghetto Gaggers, the moral uprightness and the hypocrisy of it all. I couldn't help but notice that the same things that's pinned on, sex workers in general, period, especially prostitutes, is this whole whore virgin complex dichotomy coming from, echoing from, some of the sentiments of the people who speak on Ghetto Gaggers, who speak negatively of it. I couldn't help but notice that, from my empirical observation, that they fall into two categories. These are, there's the first category, which, in which people tend to look at the women who did it as victims. And then there's the second, in which, the guys who enjoy it will say that it's degrading and put the women down for it, which sounds a lot like slut shaming and hypocritical, double standards that men tend to spearhead against women. But between those two dichotomies, I couldn't help but notice that, in that dichotomy, I couldn't help but notice that, in both cases, the people's input was done without the women's consent. Consent wasn't the concern here, whether the women consented to do it or not. The main issue with them was the moral issue. For instance, with the guys who see it as degrading but yet get off on it, their whole thing was, well, they have the freedom to do whatever they want, but I'm going to judge them and put them down for it, which sounds a lot, very, very hypocritical. That's like saying, well, I'm going to have sex, and I'm going to benefit from this slut, or I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to patronize it, but I'm going to put it down. That really doesn't make any sense, and that's not consistent. That's, if anything, really consistent with rape mentality, whore virgin complex, and the total disrespect for women. The second camp, again, precludes women's consent. They look at it from the paradigm, the perspective of, they're victims, and they fail to realize that, it's a job. You sign that contract, it's a job. The only time it would be a problem is if the guys don't tell the women exactly what it is that they're in for. Like with Max Hardcore. As I always say, you can't go around governing people's morality. As long as you're not doing anything against people's wills, I don't see a problem. And at the end of the day, I see a problem with these two camps, with these two people who want to control and regulate people's morality, for their own benefit, because that's how they feel, and they feel like everybody should subscribe and submit to the way they are. And I find that a lot of people who are morally uprighteous and like to go around judging others tend to be control freaks, very controlling people. So returning back to the issue of Ghetto Gaggers, I found that again, people were looking at it from the paradigm of, they're the victims, and they were not asking us for our consent as to how we feel about it, our input. Just like with the other camp that's saying that it's, we love it, but we find it degrading. Well, degrading to who? Do I find it degrading? That's what really matters. If I find it degrading, I'm the person who did it. So, if I don't have a problem, what's the problem unless you're the one who has a problem? Again, at the end of the day, the degradation is a very subjective thing. Exploitation is when somebody has more power over you, and that's really any, you know, business situation. For instance, you know, if you have a manager who's over you, that's exploitation, you know, because that manager can control whether you keep your job, your livelihood or not. You know, exploitation is about, you know, somebody abusing a whole lot of power, or, you know, somebody who just happens to have a whole lot of power over another individual. I mean, just because you happen to have a whole lot of power over another individual doesn't mean that you control them. At the end of the day, that's the definition. You know, most employers fall under that definition. Most employers have a lot of power over their serfs, the people who work for them. But you know, it becomes exploitation when somebody abuses that power, for instance, sexual harassment, racial harassment, discrimination, and all of those other horrible things. And, you know, some people, you know, even some porn stars, I know that they had this one ditzy broad on there, not on there, but on her blog. I can't recall her name for the life of me. I don't really keep up with porn stars. She was an African American, and she was beseeching it, saying, oh my God, they use the N-word. And, you know, they spit on women, and it's like, you know, baby, you put yourself in the same circumstance on top of that, you know, when you do porn. I mean, some people would look at you doing, because you know most of those women are doing, like, double anal, vaginal penetration and all that bullshit. You know, at the end of the day, that's a very subjective call. And on top of that, people in the African American community call each other niggas all the time. And I went to Ghetto Gaggers' website. I actually think their fucking comments are funny. They're fucking hilarious. I love their comments. You know, I don't find that they're too abusive or obtuse or nasty or negative, you know, and I work with the guys. The guys, you know, are pretty cool cats. You know, a lot of people don't like them out of envy. You know, a lot of people in the porn industry don't like them out of envy. But anyways, you know, many acts can be categorized as degrading. I mean, BDSM, again, is about somebody having power over another individual. So, you know, what makes that different from what they do in Ghetto Gaggers? Some people enjoy rough sex. Me personally, you know, I like the feeling of having, you know, especially a big white guy, dominate me. You know, and kind of like take my body from me. You know, that's what I get off on. You know, does that mean that it's degrading because I like it? You know, that's my call to make, whether I want to own that and say it's degrading or not. It's not up to you. And, you know, I find that, you know, a lot of the problems with people who want to govern other people's morals, it derives from the fact that, you know, from what I observed, you know, these people who, you know, and it's funny too, it's interesting because they were mostly knocking the women. They weren't even knocking the guys, you know, as much as they were blaming and saying, oh my God, can you work with the guys? You know, they really weren't knocking him for doing it with the women. But, you know, I find it interesting that, you know, and this comes down to porn, prostitution, and all of those things too, all those good things. You know, people tend to knock it because, you know, according to people, there's no emotional attachment. And, you know, I feel that they're knocking it because they feel, you know, in our society, you know, people feel like, okay, if a woman has sex, she has to have an emotional attachment. You know, but they never argue about guys who just, you know, fuck for the pussy. You know, all of my God, you know, it's a sin if women, you know, decide, hey, I want to get some pay out of it. You know, at the end of the day, you know, women operate very differently from men. And just like some men fuck for the pussy, you know, you should knock women, you know, like myself, who want to fuck for the money, whether it be in porn or prostitution or whatever. And, you know, I find that, you know, that question doesn't come up, you know, when it comes down to vacuous relationships, when it comes down to guys. Hey, you know, if a guy wants to be quote-unquote pig and go around and fuck a whole lot of women, you know, people give him kudos for it, you know, they call him a stud. But if a woman does the same thing, you know, when she does it just for the dick and not for the dollar, they call her a slut, you know. So I'm starting to see, you know, a consistent pattern here, And on top of that, another thing that I observed, another thing that I noticed is that a lot of people will, let's see, you know, a lot of people, for instance, okay, now that I remember, y'all probably heard about this thing called RapeX, right? It's this device in South Africa that's designed to, in a sense, hinder rape, where if the person, the perp, puts his dick inside the woman, the device, you know, catches onto his dick and puts him in such excruciating pain that it gives the woman time to run away. And then if he tries to remove it, he can't, because, you know, like the reverse bear trap in Saw, you know, it gets worse and worse. The pain, that is, it gets worse and worse. Now, you would think that, considering that every single man on this earth came from a woman, and that even if your daddy was a Rolling Stone and walked away, you were at least raised by your mother, you think that most people, especially guys, would be in favor of that. You know, why not punish a fucking rapist perp for doing it? Fact is that most of the outrage, there's a lot, you know, there's more outrage than embracement, you know, for a device that's designed to hinder rape. So all of this got me thinking, you know, it confirms my point that all of these little, you know, moral rules and, you know, gender-based laws designed to govern women's morality and our sexuality, and, you know, basically in effect control our bodies in a way that men are never subjected to, that is never done to men, is designed to, you know, enhance and benefit men's, you know, reproductive strategy. It's all designed for their reproductive benefits. So, you know, to the ladies out there, y'all need to start thinking, and y'all need to start thinking for yourselves rather than, you know, letting these guys fuckaboo you and think for you. You know, and at the end of the day, you know, if porn's your thing, you know, there's nothing wrong with it. You know, it's just basically sex, except that you're getting paid and it's on camera, of course. Now, it's kind of funny too, because that's evidence of paid sex, but yet that's legal in prostitution, where you get paid for sex and it's not on camera. It's not. That's like saying that a snuff film is not evidence, is legal. That's like saying a snuff film is legal, and that murder without it being recorded is not. It's crazy. Anyways, thank y'all so much for listening, and you know, enjoy the beautiful weather out here and have a wonderful day.